Financial Argument. Follow us on YouTube.
Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we've been watching each of these economic indicators, and each one, since we've started, has declined. We know this. This is a fact. There's no way to argue this because we can see it, we've been tracking it, and we see that everything is contracting right now. And I mean everything. Even the manipulated numbers are contracting. And we can see at this point, the U.S. government central bankers, they're in crisis mode. They're planning for this collapse. They're getting ready for this collapse. They know it's going to happen. They know they want to control it. And we can see right now that as more and more of these economic indicators hit the fan, they're getting more and more worried. And this is why the central bank is pushing for more legislation to get more power. And you're going to see the central bank continually put out articles, have meetings talking about we need more ammo, we need legislation, we need Congress to give us more power, because this is what they ultimately want. They want complete power of the system. But when we look at the economic indicators, things are deteriorating very, very quickly. We know that auto sales, well, they've reached a plateau. Ford admits to it. They know that auto sales are going nowhere right now. And what they're seeing is a surge in delinquent subprime auto borrowers. I mean, they're hitting a 7-year high right now. And of course, all the automobile companies, they're handing out incentives, trying to get people in there to purchase the cars. And we saw this prior to 2008, which put these companies into bankruptcy. And we see right now that August was a disaster, and September, with all these incentives, it did not help the auto industry. We see Ford is shutting down some plants in Louisville, Kentucky, the factory building that builds the Escape, the Lincoln MKC, the sport utility vehicle. Well, they're closing it down. They're closing plants in Mexico that make the Fusion sedan, the Fiesta. The second largest U.S. automaker will close the F-150 factory near Kansas City for 7 days. Worst of all, while the rest of the U.S. manufacturing sector has been in a decline, the auto industry was really like the only shining light for U.S. manufacturing. And now that light is going out. So this is going to have a huge impact on the economy once again, and it's going to have a huge impact on how the economy is really doing. And we see more and more companies, the sales, the revenue, they're not hitting what they used to hit, like back in the good old days. We see IBM right now, after 17 consecutive quarters, more than 4 years of declining annual revenue growth, IBM reported the third quarter revenues at $19.22 billion. Well, they beat their consensus of $19 billion, but it's still 0.3% lower than a year ago. So this is the 18th consecutive quarter of declining revenues. Now, during the Great Recession, guess what? They had 3. Actually 4. I'm sorry. They have 4. And now, we're way past that. And of course, you know what the companies do at this point. They lay off individuals. They cut costs. And then they say, oh, the company is profitable once again. But when you look back to the way the company was and what it is today, it's completely different. It's maybe half the size. They have half the buildings. They have half the manufacturing. They have half of everything. We see it in retail. It happens all the time. I don't know if many people remember Circuit City. They had stores all over the place, and they said, oh no, there's nothing wrong with Circuit City. We're just closing a couple of stores here and there. And as they continually closed stores, well, they couldn't generate the sales. Even though they laid off a lot of people, they cut expenses. Eventually what happens is they go out of business. And as the economy continually declines, this is what's happening to all these corporations. They cannot continue on. Now, we've been looking at total industrial production in the U.S., and we know it has fallen to 1% in September, compared to September of 2015, where it was much higher. And we see right now is that this is the first time industrial production index has reached this level. And the last time we saw it at this level was back in March of 2007. So when we look at this, we see business equipment production fell by 1.4%. We see electronics is down by negative 5.8%, clothing down negative 8.2%, paper products down by negative 4.3%. And it goes on and on and on. And what we're seeing is a complete breakdown of industrial production. And when we look at industrial production, is a great indicator to show us when the recession is going to hit. And when we look back, going back to the 1950s, we see that the recession hit every time industrial production declined. The last time it declined was, guess what? In 2007 going into 2008. Prior to that was 2000 going into 2001. And it's consistent throughout time. And we're in the same exact pattern as we were back in 2007 going into 2008. And what this shows us is we're in a recession right now. That's what this means. We are in a recession. We are heading towards a collapse of the entire system. Now, the government is not going to come out and say we're in a recession. They don't do this. The central bank does not do this. They wait until months and months later to even recognize that we were in a recession. But from all the economic indicators and from everything that we've been looking at, they are showing us we are in a recession right now. And what we're seeing is that this is going to continue, because once it starts to drop, the drop accelerates like everything else. And what we're seeing right now is the government, the central banks, they're scrambling because they know that this economy, yes, they can manipulate the rest of the numbers, stock market, GDP, unemployment, but when everything else dies, there's nothing left for them to do. This is why the central bank wants more power. They want more control of the economy, but they'll never be able to control the people aspect of the economy. And this will always be their downfall, no matter what. I know many people say, oh, they can just keep creating currency, they can keep manipulating the numbers, but when everyone is just sitting around, there's no industrial production, there's no manufacturing, there's no retail sales, more and more stores are closing, more and more people being laid off because companies are cutting expenses. Guess what? There will come a time where the economy will not be able to function. I don't care how much currency they print. I don't care how much manipulation there is. It will not be able to function correctly. And the free market, the real economy, it will break through, and that's when the whole thing will start falling apart. Now, we talk a lot about how the banks, the central banks, are manipulating the precious metals market. And 2016, well, it's shaping up as the year when all these conspiracy theories are now being confirmed. I remember a couple years ago when everyone was out there, and there are many others that were doing incredible work finding out, who is manipulating the precious metals market. Gada, Bix Weir, and many others, David Morgan, Rob Kirby, they were all out there, and they were pointing the fingers and saying, this is all manipulated. And what we're seeing right now is that they were all right. So all these conspiracy theories, they're all coming true. Because what we're seeing is these lawsuits that were pointing fingers at Deutsche Bank, pointing fingers at Nova Scotia, pointing fingers at HSBC. Well, guess what? They were manipulating the silver market. Deutsche Bank agreed to pay $38 million to settle U.S. litigation over allegations that it conspired with other banks to fix the silver prices. The remaining two banks in the class action suit, HSBC and Bank of Nova Scotia, well, guess what? The lawsuit, which was green-lighted 2 weeks ago, is scheduled for October 28th. And these are just the small players. We're not even talking about the central bank of central banks, which is completely manipulating everything through these banks. And we can see right now that most of these conspiracy theories, this is what they like to call them, I like to call it truth. Most of these truths that are coming out right now, we are continually pushing the envelope to show that everything that's going on around us has been manipulated by the central bank, has been manipulated by the U.S. government, and we have been lied to for years about everything. They have been controlling what we think and what we're supposed to think. And when you break out of that and you stop listening to what they're telling you and you think on your own, you can see what they are doing. You can see through the lies because it doesn't make sense. Everything they're telling you. I mean, Obama is out there telling us that the economy has recovered, everything is fine. We're looking at all the economic indicators, and he just said this today. He's taking his victory lap, telling anyone that doesn't agree with him they're crazy. Well, I remember him saying that about Obamacare, that anyone that doesn't believe him, that this is going to be affordable, you're going to be able to keep your doctor, you're going to be able to keep your plan, you're crazy. Well, again, he's lying because we've been looking at the truth, we've been looking at the economic indicators, and what do we see? We see we're already in a recession, we're heading into a collapse. That's what we see right now. We have facts to back all of this up. We see Professor Ising. He is out there, and he is the creator of the EU. And what he is saying right now is that the ECB is becoming dangerously overextended, and the whole Euro project is unworkable in its current form. And he's saying that this whole entire thing is a house of cards. It is going to be coming tumbling down. It is a failed experiment. And we can see the centralization that these elites, the globalists, the central banks want. Guess what? It is failing. And failing hard. This is why this economy is going to collapse, and it's going to be a horrific collapse when it does come down. And this time, when it does come down, it's going to be nothing that we've ever seen before. And this is why you need to get prepared for what is coming. Because what you can see is they've been lying to us for a very long time. And truth is coming out. They can't stop it. They'd like to stop it, but it's getting very difficult to stop. And as more of these truths come out, guess what? The system starts breaking down. Because people start to realize they've been lying. So get prepared for what is about to come. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.